Love to have you. Larry, John, Janice, the team. I love that you sang There's a Better Way, because that's what we're working on this fall program, this small group program, this better way, this grace trail, this path that we can follow. So often we get stuck and get paralyzed. There was a woman that just came back from church service, and she came into her house, and she interrupted an intruder in her house who was robbing her of her valuables. And she said, "Stop, Acts 2:38. And he stopped, and she calmly called the police. And the police showed up, and as they were handcuffing him, they said to the robber, "Why did you let a Bible verse stop you?" He said, "Bible verse? I thought she had an axe and 238s. Things are not always as they seem. We get so caught up in our heads with the way we think things are. And we get paralyzed, and we get frightened, and we let our fear and our anxiety and our resentment stop us from moving, and we get stagnant. And that's not good. We need to keep moving. We need to keep growing. The only thing that is guaranteed in life is that things will change. Everything changes constantly, and we need to change with it. We need to walk with it. And what we can do to help us with that is ask questions. Like the Grace Trail allows us to ask questions. And I'm sharing this because this is the book we're using, Grace Trail. We're in week 2 of our small group program, our fall program. And this little book by Ann Berry Jolis is just a sweet little book. And it has a great practice to walk this Grace Trail. This week, she talks about walking off your war. Walking off your war. She says in this chapter, in this reading for this week, that her son was in Afghanistan in combat. And he was the one that had to go around and look for bombs in the road. At any moment, a bomb could have gone off. And she said it was even harder to talk to him and to see him, because it just brought up all this fear in her. And she said, how does anybody come back from something like that? She said her friends would ask how he is, and she's like, oh, so much fear. How does she have hope? And she started working with this concept of grace. She was reading an article about the state of Maine. And she read in Maine there was a trail that was mostly, this town in Maine was mostly, tourism was its biggest resource, or where they got their funds, because of this trail. And in the article it said, who was walking the trail but veterans? Veterans were walking off their war. And so she looked into it a little bit more and found out that Earl Schaefer was the first person to walk the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. It was 2,185 miles. He came back from World War II, put on a backpack and a coat, and told his family, I got to go walk off my war. And he spent months on this trail, and it caught on. Years and years ago, after war, the men that were fighting in combat would walk to get home. They had an opportunity to walk off their war, to spend that time in thinking about what had happened and get themselves grounded again and get a better sense of who they were again after witnessing combat. And so this Appalachian Trail has been really important for veterans. Sean Gobin, who was also a veteran in 2012, walked the trail. And he started something he calls warrior expeditions. There's a website if you want to check it out, warriorhike.com, and he does bike, hike, and paddle excursions to help veterans walk off their war, to move through that process of getting to know themselves again, of letting go of things that happened. Now, I can't even imagine what that's like for our veterans that have been in combat. I can't imagine. And all of us have wars within our heads, have wars in our consciousness. Maybe we have wars, we often have wars in our consciousness. We can have conflicts outside of ourselves as well. There's a picture I want to show you that kind of reminded me, like, that's how it feels inside our head sometimes. That's how it feels out in the world sometimes. You know, we're just this angry. And there's a line drawn between us and the other person, or there's a line drawn in our consciousness between what we maybe want to do, who we think we ought to be, and who we are. We need to find our footing. And this reading is about that, finding your footing, get moving, get grounded. It can help, this grace trail can help broaden our perspective. It can help us see things more clearly. We can see that conflict is never really about the other person. It's always within us. It starts and ends in our consciousness. Joel Goldsmith in The Infinite Way says this: there is never a conflict with person or condition, but rather a false concept mentally entertained about person, thing, circumstance, or condition. Therefore, make the correction within yourself rather than attempt to change anyone or anything in the without. It all starts in our consciousness. It all starts within. So we have the power to change it with a thought, to find our footing, to get moving, to allow ourselves to not be stagnant, either virtually or physically. It doesn't matter. Get moving in your consciousness. Don't be stagnant. Start asking yourself questions. It's a great way to get moving in consciousness by asking questions. It's about the question. So in our small group program, there's a discussion, there are discussion questions, there's a study guide. And we always publish these on Thursday in our update. They're in our digital bulletin. If you are part of a group, you get these questions from your group leader. So there's lots of opportunities for you to look at the questions. Now, I usually write the questions. Sometimes I find them within the book, but you know, I haven't really sat with the questions myself. And so yesterday morning, I thought, you know, I need to really sit with these questions. They're not easy. I'm sorry. They're not easy, but they're good to help get a sense of who you are. Get moving. And so I thought I might answer some of these questions that I wrote for you and how they apply to my life and how they are for me. And I'm not going to go through all of them because that would take too long, but I'll go through some of them. So one of the questions is, what war in your life have you needed to walk off? What war in your life? When I was diagnosed 2 years ago with osteoporosis, I was angry. I was so angry. I needed to walk off that war. The inner conflict in my mind was, this isn't fair. This isn't fair. I take my calcium, I lift weights, I run, I do everything I can to take care of myself, and I still have this osteoporosis, and it changed me because I became afraid. I became afraid to ski, I became afraid to even run, I became afraid I'm gonna fall down, I'm gonna break something. It changed me. So that was the war in my head. This isn't fair. Why is this happening to me? You know, I was diagnosed with, most of you know, with breast cancer 5 years ago, and that didn't affect me as much as this did. This was changing my life. This was putting a damper on the things that I enjoyed to do. So I kept asking myself, how can this be? It's not fair. And are any of us given a fair life? Who says life gets to be fair? What's fair anyway? I started thinking about the bones in my body, how they represent the bones in our body support our body. They're our support system for our body. And I wasn't allowing myself to have support, to be supported. I felt like I had to do everything myself. And so this was a gift to me. Walking off this particular war was about learning to ask for help, learning to let other people help me instead of, I got this, I'll do it, I'll take care of it, I'll do it myself. I was able to get moving. That summer, my husband and I bought e-bikes. I was scared to get on a bike. I was afraid I'm going to fall down. I'm not a very good bike rider anyway. But you got to do things when you're scared. That's where courage comes in. You do things anyway when you're afraid. And those first few times on that e-bike, nervous. But I found joy. I found this freedom. I found this new way to move and not have to pedal so hard. So I let the osteoporosis, instead of making it or allowing it to define me, I let it refine me. The difference of one letter. Instead of letting your circumstances define you, let them refine you into a better version of yourself, into a version of yourself that takes some chances, that lives life. Let's see, another question. What brings you hope when all seems hopeless? What brings me hope is seeing my grandkids. Seeing those little ones who they're just so full of life. They're not hardened yet by life. They play. They're actively playing or hearing the sounds of kids out on the playground. On Wednesdays, we have our staff meetings outside, and often the kids are out there, and it's just such a wonderful sound. And that can bring hope. These souls are here to explore, to be curious, to love life. There are 7.5 billion people on the planet, and for some reason, our paths have crossed. And that gives me hope. There's something more going on here than what we see. Why did our paths cross out of the billions of people on the planet? That brings me hope. There's a higher power at work here. There's something more than what our physical eyes are seeing, our human eyes are seeing. The other part of that question was, how do you know when you're moving in the right direction? One step at a time. It's one step at a time. You keep listening. Keep listening for that still small voice. When I'm not moving, when I'm moving and not stuck, I feel it. I feel it in my gut. I feel it in my heart. You probably have experienced that. When you take one step at a time towards a new goal, towards something in your life that you want to accomplish. Keep moving. Keep moving. Jolez calls this floundering forward. You're not quite sure, but you just keep moving. And let this process of discovery just be what it is in your life. It's a great reminder that we have here in Colorado with the Continental Divide. If you think about the Continental Divide, all the water, every drop that falls east of the Continental Divide, 1 inch east of that Continental Divide, flows down into the Boulder Creek and eventually works its way to the Atlantic Ocean. Every drop of water that falls just 1 inch west ends up in the Colorado River and flows to the Pacific Ocean. 2 great oceans, 1 ridge. Think about that in your life. We walk this ridge on our life. 1 thought, 1 word, 1 choice can start a flow of thoughts of lack, limitation, conflict, or 1 thought, 1 word, 1 choice can start a flow of abundance and joy and happiness. We get to choose. We walk that ridge, but we got to walk it. We got to keep moving. Let those thoughts fall on the right side, or whatever side that is for you, east or west. It doesn't matter. Walk that ridge. That 1 drop can make a huge difference. So another question, is there an area of your life where you get stuck and feel you can't move forward? Oh, yes. Anybody else get stuck? We get stuck. We get stuck. We get stuck in our thinking. We get stuck with our stories that we tell ourselves. I get stuck when somebody I care about hurts me. I get stuck on that, and I play the words over and over in my head. When I got divorced, that story played in my head for a long time. The words that were spoken, the actions that were taken, the injustice of it all after all I did for that person. How could they come back and say mean things to me or about me? But I get stuck and I get angry. It helps to ask questions. What was my role in this situation? Even if it's 1% of the whole problem, I had a role in this. What was my role in the end of my marriage? How could I have been different? How could I see this differently? You know, hurt people hurt people. People who are hurt will hurt people. We do. As human beings, we do that. So are we willing to see it from a broader perspective? Are we willing to see that we had a role in that? We can stay hurt, or we can allow ourselves to move forward. We can allow to see that person as a teacher, as a gift that is allowing us to step into a greater version of ourselves, a more loving version of ourselves. Ann Barry Jolis says, in Grace Trail, the secret to life is not having all the right answers, but more about asking the right questions. So we keep asking the questions and sit with it. Sit with it. Spend some time with it. Check in with yourself. So walking off the war gives us this time to be introspective, gives us this time to learn who are we after this situation? How do we want to show up in it? One of the practices that I really like is called a compassion meditation, and it was first developed by Chade-Meng Tan in his book, Search Inside Yourself. And there's lots of versions of it. You've probably heard it before. The one I want to just read to you is from the Avatar Journal, which I don't know what that is, but it was a blog that I found, but I liked this version of it. And it says, with attention, place your attention on this person, whoever this person is that hurt you. And repeat to yourself, just like me, this person is seeking some happiness for his or her life. Just like me, this person is trying to avoid suffering in his or her life. Just like me, this person has known sadness, loneliness, and despair. Just like me, this person is seeking to fulfill his or her needs. And just like me, this person is learning about life. When we put it that way, we can have compassion for anyone. Anyone. Try it on someone you're in that, that picture that you're facing off with. It can level the playing field. Just allow yourself. We're all in this together. We're all here with our challenges, trying to figure it out, trying to get clarity. So another question is, what are you curious about right now? How can curiosity propel you forward? Can you let yourself sit with the curiosity instead of needing to know the answer or outcome? Ooh. Anne Barry-Jolis says, curiosity will lead to pathways never before noticed, walked, or even in existence. They lead to subtle changes that add up to transformation over time. I get curious about my position here at Columbine. I get curious about it a lot. I journal about it a lot. What is mine to do? What is mine not to do? What programs, events, or activities do we need to keep this community growing and vibrant and alive and joyful? What do you all want? But the curiosity propels me forward. Instead of getting stuck, let's try this. Like with childlike wonder, we can try things. How can we be the best we can be? What is our purpose? Our purpose statement here was the result of many of you coming together and sharing your ideas. So we're trying some new things. Are they going to work? I don't know. But we're trying things. We'd love for you to try them with us, if you feel so called. Try some new things. Meet some new people. Look for those white mugs in Fellowship Hall after the service and have a conversation with somebody different. You never know when you're going to meet your next best friend. Being in a place of curiosity helps us stay open. It helps us stay open to possibilities instead of being scared. Oh, I wonder how this e-bike's going to feel. It's fun. So we got to ask ourselves these questions. Ask the questions. My White Stone this year, my word that I came up with was ask. Interestingly enough, there's no coincidences here. Ask. And on the back, I put with assurance, with awareness. And there's one other A word, but I can't remember what it is. But ask. Ask yourself, and then get moving. Find your footing means to get some confidence. Maybe you need to move and then find your footing, or maybe you find your footing and then you get moving. It doesn't matter which order you do that in, but get moving. Don't get stuck. Don't get stagnant, because it's that resistance that causes us the suffering. It's the resistance. So are you finding yourself in a place of conflict? Maybe in consciousness or outside with someone else? What do you want to do about it? Does that person even know you're in conflict with them? Is it all in your head? Sometimes we give people rent-free space in our minds, and they stay there for a long time. We can allow them to move on as we move on. Allow it. Ask the questions. Walk the Grace Trail. We have a Grace Trail outside, and we don't have a map, but we have and I left it on my chair, but we have a handout for you on your way out. If you want to walk the Grace Trails, half piece of paper, it has some questions. We have flagstones out in the yard. It starts under the canopy of trees, right off the sidewalk. You'll see gratitude there. And then you walk around in a counterclockwise circle. Yes. Next to the playground. You'll find it. Ann, where's Ann? Ann will give you a tour if you like. If you want to grab some people and do it together, the staff did it on Wednesday. We're going to do it every Wednesday before our staff meetings and walk the Grace Trail together. It was touching, I thought. It was moving. I felt close to everybody as we did that together. It can be a wonderful experience to allow yourself that grace. Allow yourself to see things from a different perspective. Allow yourself to move, to find your footing and move. Namaste. Peace be with you.